I saw an alien woman handing out, looking for a partner, flyers. No conditions at all. Marcus stood at the edge of the crowded square, his eyes scanning the familiar hustle and bustle of the city. The noise of the market, the chatter of vendors, the honking of vehicles in the distance. It was all part of the city's rhythm, one that he had come to know well. A journalist at heart, Marcus was always looking for the next big story, the one that would change everything. He never expected to find it in the most ordinary of places, a busy street corner. As he walked through the square, something caught his attention. A figure stood alone, in the midst of all the chaos, handing out flyers. At first glance, she seemed no different than the countless other street vendors who tried to grab the attention of passers-by. But there was something unusual about her. The woman was not like the others. For one, she wasn't human. Her skin, a soft lavender hue, shimmered slightly in the daylight. Her eyes, a deep violet, seemed to glow with an intensity that contrasted with the dim city sky. She stood there, calmly and confidently, without the usual hustle of a street vendor. Her expression was serene, almost otherworldly, as she handed out brightly colored flyers to anyone who passed by. There was no rush in her movements, no frantic attempts to make a sale. Instead, it was as though she was waiting for something, or perhaps someone, to come to her. Marcus stopped in his tracks. He had seen many strange things in his career as a journalist, but this was something different. He was drawn to her, an inexplicable pull that urged him to approach. He hadn't even realized he was moving until he found himself standing in front of her. The alien woman looked up at him, her violet eyes meeting his with a calm, knowing gaze. "Looking for a partner? No conditions at all," the flyer read in bold, alien script. The message was simple, but it struck Marcus like a thunderclap. He didn't know what to make of it. A part of him wanted to dismiss it as some sort of joke or an odd promotional stunt, but there was an undeniable authenticity to the woman. She didn't seem like a marketer or a scam artist. She wasn't trying to sell anything. She extended the flyer to him, her hand graceful, almost delicate. "Take one," she said in a voice that sounded like music, soft but clear, with a hint of a foreign accent. It was not a demand, but an invitation. Marcus hesitated for a moment before accepting the flyer, his curiosity piqued. "Partner?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "What does that mean?" The woman smiled, a faint but warm curve of her lips. "I am Lyra," she replied, her voice gentle yet full of purpose. "I come from a distant place, far from here. I seek companionship, understanding, nothing more, nothing less." Marcus studied her for a moment, trying to make sense of her words. There was no hint of malice, no ulterior motive in her expression. She was just offering something. But what? "I don't understand," Marcus said, his confusion evident. "You're offering what exactly?" Lyra's gaze softened, and she looked around, as though checking to make sure no one was listening. The crowd passed by, oblivious to the strange encounter taking place on the street corner. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Where I come from," she began, "relationships are dictated by rules, expectations. My people are kind, have complicated ways of choosing who we spend our lives with, but I do not wish for that. Here on your planet, I wish to understand what it means to form a connection without such restrictions." Marcus blinked, processing what she was saying. It didn't make sense. Why would an alien come to Earth, a planet of humans, just to seek a connection with no conditions? And why would she advertise it so openly? "I don't get it," Marcus said, his brow furrowed. "Why would you just hand out flyers for something like this?" Lyra smiled again, but this time there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Because I am tired of the rules," she said softly. "I want to know what it's like to connect without fear, without expectations. I want to see if it's possible for someone, anyone, to accept me for who I am without any hidden agendas." Marcus stared at her, his mind racing. This was unlike anything he had ever encountered. He had covered stories about alien invasions, alien diplomacy, even intergalactic politics. But this was something entirely different. This was personal. This was about one alien's journey to understand human relationships, and she was starting with him. 1,000 questions raced through his mind, but he couldn't seem to find the right words to ask. Instead, he looked down at the flyer she had given him. The words, "looking for a partner, no conditions at all," stared back at him, simple but profound. It felt almost absurd, but at the same time he couldn't deny the curiosity that bubbled inside him. "Are you really serious about this?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Lyra nodded, her eyes never leaving his. I am, she said softly. No conditions. Just a simple desire for companionship. Marcus paused, still unsure of what to think. There was something undeniably captivating about her, something that went beyond her appearance. Her presence was calming, almost otherworldly, and yet she seemed human in a way. Not in the physical sense, but in the way she spoke, the way she carried herself. So what happens now? Marcus asked, his curiosity winning over his skepticism. Lyra's smile widened. Now we talk, and you decide if you wish to know more. As she spoke, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation building within him. This encounter, this strange, unexpected meeting with an alien woman who was looking for nothing but a connection, had the potential to change everything. For the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of excitement, a sense that he was on the verge of uncovering a story far beyond anything he had ever imagined. Over the next few days, Marcus couldn't shake the memory of the encounter with Lyra. His thoughts kept drifting back to her calm presence and the mysterious flyer she had handed him. He had seen many strange things in his time as a journalist, but nothing had ever affected him like this. What had she meant by no conditions? And why had she chosen to come to Earth of all places? The questions nagged at him, urging him to seek answers. He couldn't help but wonder if this was the big story he had been waiting for, the one that would put him on the map. But even more than that, there was a part of him that wanted to understand Lyra, to understand why she was so different from everyone he had ever met. That evening, Marcus found himself back in the square where he had first seen her. He wasn't sure what he was expecting, but he couldn't resist the pull. The crowd was as lively as ever, with people moving in all directions, caught up in their own lives. Yet amidst the chaos, there she was again, standing in the same spot, handing out the same flyers. She was a striking sight, even among the other pedestrians. Her alien beauty seemed to glow against the backdrop of the city. Her lavender skin, her violet eyes, and the way she stood so peacefully in the midst of the madness, it was impossible not to notice her. As Marcus approached, he caught her eye. She smiled, and for a moment the busy city seemed to fade into the background. "Back again," Lyra said softly, her voice as calm as it had been the first time they spoke. "I couldn't stop thinking about what you said," Marcus replied, his voice tinged with curiosity. "About the no conditions part, I still don't really understand." Lyra's smile remained, but there was a quiet sadness in her eyes. She handed him another flyer, even though he still had the one from before. It was as if she wanted to offer him something more than just a piece of paper. "You don't have to understand," she said. "Not yet, but I will explain if you wish." Marcus hesitated, feeling a mix of confusion and intrigue. What was it about her that made him feel this way? He had met so many people in his life, some kind, some cruel, but none had ever made him feel like this. There was something real about Lyra, something raw and honest that drew him in. I want to understand," he said finally. I think I need to." Lyra nodded as if she had expected his response. She gestured for him to follow her as she began to walk toward a quieter part of the square, away from the noise and the crowd. Marcus followed, his mind racing with questions. As they walked, Lyra spoke in a soft voice as though she was sharing something private, something deeply personal. "Where I come from," she began, "relationships are not simple. We have a society built on rules, on expectations. The idea of love or companionship is structured, rigid. There are guidelines for everything, the way we choose our partners, the way we live our lives, the way we build our families." She paused for a moment, looking up at the sky. "But all of that feels unnatural. It feels like we are trapped by our own traditions, our own fears." Marcus listened intently, the weight of her words sinking in. "So you're looking for something different, something less complicated?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, I've always felt out of place in my own society. I've watched my people and I've seen the way they live, how they follow the rules, how they follow orders. But what about true connection? What about finding someone who accepts you, not because of your status or your family, but because of who you are?" She stopped walking and turned to face him, her violet eyes locking with his. "I came here because I believe that you humans are capable of something more. You don't have the same constraints we have. You don't have the same expectations. There's freedom in that. And I want to experience it. I want to understand it." Marcus's mind was spinning. He had never heard anyone speak like this before. It was as though Lyra was trying to convince herself as much as she was trying to explain it to him. Her honesty was disarming, and for a moment, Marcus felt like he was seeing something deeper than just an alien visitor. He was seeing a person, someone who, despite being from another world, was searching for something just like everyone else. Connection, understanding, love. "But why me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you asking me for this? Why not just find someone else?" Lyra's expression softened. "Because I believe that everyone has something to offer, something unique, and because you asked the right questions." She paused, almost as if weighing her next words carefully. "I've learned that the right connection is not about expectations or about rules. It's about being open, being vulnerable, and letting someone in. I want to find that, Marcus. I want to see if it's possible." Her words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city around them continued to move, but it felt as though time had slowed. Marcus could feel the weight of her gaze on him, and in that moment, something inside him shifted. He had always been a skeptic, always looking for the logical explanation, the hard facts. But this was different. This was real. "I don't know if I can give you what you're looking for," he said slowly. "I don't know if I can just drop everything and accept this." Lyra smiled gently. "You don't have to do anything, Marcus. You just have to be willing to see me for who I am and nothing more. No expectations, no judgments, just two beings meeting in the middle without the weight of the world on their shoulders." Marcus felt a flicker of something deep inside him. He couldn't explain it, but there was something about her, something in the way she spoke that made him want to try. It wasn't a matter of logic or reason, it was a matter of trust. Trust in something that didn't require answers, something that didn't fit into the neat boxes he was used to. For the first time in a long while, Marcus felt a sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Lyra was right. Maybe there was more to life than following the rules. Maybe true connection was about letting go of control and embracing the unknown. "I'll give it a try," Marcus said, his voice firm with a newfound resolve. "I don't know where this will lead, but I'll try." Lyra's smile widened, her eyes lighting up with something that looked like gratitude. "Thank you, Marcus, that's all I need. The rest will come in time." As they stood there in the quiet of the square, something shifted between them. It wasn't just the promise of a story, or even the promise of an alien connection. It was something deeper, something that neither of them could fully explain. But in that moment, they both knew that this was the beginning of something new, something unexpected. As the days went on, Marcus found himself meeting with Lyra more frequently. Each encounter left him with more questions than answers, but strangely, he didn't mind. There was something about her that intrigued him, something that made him want to understand more about her world and the strange invitation she had extended to him. They spent their time talking, discussing everything from human society to alien customs. There was an ease between them, a connection that felt natural despite their differences. One afternoon, as they sat in a small cafe tucked away from the busy streets, Lyra told Marcus more about her people and their way of life. The more she spoke, the more Marcus realized how different their worlds were. Her people, she explained, lived by a strict set of traditions that governed everything, from the way they built relationships to the way they chose their partners. There was little room for deviation, and emotions were often controlled, seen as something to be managed rather than experienced freely. "I come from a place where love is not something you find freely," Lyra said, her voice soft as she stared out the window. "It's a transaction almost. You are matched based on compatibility, based on status, not on the connection you feel. It's all calculated." Marcus listened carefully, his brow furrowed in thought. He couldn't imagine living in a world where love was measured like that, where relationships were bound by such strict rules. It seemed unnatural to him. He had always believed that relationships should be about choice, about emotions that couldn't be controlled or predicted. "But you're here now," Marcus said, his voice gentle. "You're seeking something different. You want something real." Lyra nodded. "Yes, I want to know what it feels like to truly connect with someone without all the rules and expectations. I want to experience something that's not defined by my species' traditions. I want to feel something, uncalculated, something human." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment Marcus was silent. He understood in a way. He had spent so much of his life focusing on facts and logic, never allowing himself to fully explore the messy, unpredictable nature of emotions. But now, he found himself questioning everything. Could a connection really exist without rules, without expectations? Was it possible to truly let go of everything and simply be with someone? His thoughts were interrupted when Lyra turned toward him, her violet eyes catching his. "Marcus, I need to ask you something important." He met her gaze, his heart skipping a beat. "What is it?" "Why are you so hesitant?" she asked, her voice calm but probing. "You seem to be holding something back, even though you've said you're willing to try. I know you're curious, but I also sense that there's a part of you that's afraid. What are you afraid of?" Marcus took a deep breath, feeling a knot form in his chest. He hadn't really thought about it before, but now that Lyra had pointed it out, he realized that she was right. There was fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of opening himself up to someone, even someone like her. He had built walls around himself for so long, walls that kept his emotions at a distance, that the thought of tearing them down was daunting. "I don't know," Marcus said honestly, his voice tinged with vulnerability. "I guess I'm afraid of getting hurt, or maybe I'm afraid of feeling too much. You know, it's easier to stay guarded, to keep everything in control." Lyra looked at him with understanding. "I know what that's like," she said softly. "I come from a place where everything is controlled, where emotions are to be kept in check. But that's not living, Marcus, that's surviving." Her words struck a chord with him. He had always prided himself on being in control, on being logical and rational. But now, in the face of something so foreign, something so raw and unpredictable, he was beginning to realize that maybe he had been missing out on something important. Maybe it was time to stop controlling everything and start living. Lyra reached across the table and placed her hand gently over his. Her touch was light, but it sent a ripple of warmth through him. "I'm not asking you to let go of everything at once," she said, her voice reassuring. "I'm just asking you to open up. To let yourself experience something without trying to understand it right away. Sometimes, the most beautiful things in life are the ones that don't make sense at first." Marcus looked down at their hands, the warmth of her touch grounding him in the moment. For the first time in a long time, he felt the walls he had built around his heart begin to crack. He wasn't sure what was happening, but something inside him was shifting. He realized that he didn't need all the answers right away. He didn't need to understand everything in order to feel something, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. "I'm willing to try," he said quietly, his voice filled with a newfound determination. "I'll open up. I'll let myself experience it, whatever it is." Lyra smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that seemed to light up the entire cafe. "Thank you, Marcus," she said softly. "That's all I needed to hear." As they sat together in silence, Marcus felt a sense of peace settle over him. It wasn't a resolution, not yet. But it was a step toward something real, something honest. And for the first time in his life, he was ready to embrace the unknown, to let go of his fears and allow himself to feel, whatever that meant. The next few weeks passed in a blur of new experiences. Marcus and Lyra continued to meet regularly, and with each conversation, each moment shared, their bond deepened. They didn't rush things. There was no need to. They simply enjoyed each other's company, learning from each other, discovering what it meant to connect without the weight of expectations. Marcus found himself opening up in ways he hadn't before. He talked about his past, his dreams, and his fears. Lyra listened patiently, never judging, always accepting. She shared her own story, her own struggles with her people and their traditions. And as they talked, something powerful began to grow between them, a quiet understanding, a sense of belonging. But just as Marcus began to feel like he was finally breaking free from his own limitations, something unexpected happened. One evening, as they sat together in a quiet park, a group of strangers approached them. They were not human. Their appearance was unmistakable, tall, imposing, and otherworldly. They wore the same kind of uniform that Lyra had worn when they first met. It was clear they were from her planet. "Lyra," one of them said in a cold, formal voice, "it's time to return. Your experiment here is over." Lyra's expression hardened, and for the first time Marcus saw a flicker of tension in her eyes. "No," she said firmly, "I'm staying. This is where I belong now." The strangers exchanged glances, their eyes narrowing. "You know the rules, Lyra. You can't just abandon your people for a human. It's not allowed." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He had known there was more to Lyra's story, but hearing it so bluntly, so directly, made it all too real. This wasn't just about love. It was about something bigger, something he wasn't ready for. Lyra stood up, her posture strong and defiant. "I've made my choice. I'm not going back." The tension in the air was thick, and Marcus could feel the weight of the moment. He wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but he knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning, and whatever came next, he was ready to face it with Lyra by his side. The encounter with the strangers shook Marcus to his core. The coldness in their eyes, the authority they carried. It all felt like a reminder that there was much more to Lyra's presence on Earth than he had originally thought. He had known she was different, but now he understood that her decision to be here, to seek something human, came with consequences far beyond their personal connection. After the strangers left, Lyra remained silent for a long while, her eyes distant, as if she were weighing something in her mind. Marcus watched her closely, his own thoughts swirling. He had come to care for her deeply, but this new side of the situation made everything seem more complicated than it had been before. "I didn't expect them to find me so soon," Lyra finally said, her voice quiet but steady. "I didn't want them to see me like this. I wanted to figure things out on my own, without the pressure of my people watching." Marcus took a step closer to her, unsure of what to say, but he could see the conflict in her eyes. He could tell that she was torn between two worlds, one that she had always known, and one that she was beginning to care for. He couldn't imagine the weight of that decision, the pull of loyalty to her people versus the desire for something more personal, more real. "Are you going back?" he asked softly, almost afraid to hear the answer. Lyra shook her head slowly, her lavender hair catching the last light of the setting sun. "I don't want to," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "but I don't know if I can stay here either, my people. They won't understand. I'm not allowed to just choose a partner like this. It goes against everything we've been taught." Marcus's heart sank at her words. The last thing he wanted was for Lyra to feel trapped between two worlds, unable to make a choice that would make her happy. He had spent so much time trying to understand her, trying to break down the walls between their worlds, but now he felt more powerless than ever. "Then what do we do?" he asked, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "What happens next?" Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with both sadness and determination. "I don't know," she admitted. "I thought I could figure it out on my own, but I can't. It's too much. Maybe I don't belong here after all." Marcus felt a pang in his chest at her words. He didn't want to lose her, not like this, not before they had even had a chance to truly explore what they could have together. He stepped closer, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Lyra, you belong here," he said earnestly. "You don't have to go back if you don't want to. There's no one telling you what to do here. You have the freedom to choose." She turned to face him fully now, her violet eyes locking with his. "But what about you, Marcus?" she asked quietly. "What if my presence puts you in danger? What if I'm not meant to be here and staying only makes things worse for you?" Marcus shook his head firmly. "I don't care about danger. I care about you. I don't want to see you leave just because of some rule. If you want to stay, then stay. We'll figure it out together. We can make it work." Lyra seemed to take a deep breath, as though weighing his words carefully. After a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice softer than before. Maybe we can, maybe there is a way, but I don't know how. I can't go back to my people and pretend that I haven't changed. But I also don't want to live without knowing what it means to truly be free, free from all the constraints and rules that have always controlled me." Marcus's heart swelled at her words. He could hear the pain in her voice, the deep yearning for something she had never had, a chance to be herself without fear of judgment, without the weight of tradition pressing down on her every decision. "You don't have to change who you are," he said gently. "Just be yourself. And I'll be right here with you." For the first time since their conversation began, Lyra smiled, though it was a bittersweet smile. "You're the first person to ever tell me that," she said softly. I think I needed to hear it more than I realized." They stood in silence for a few moments, both lost in their thoughts, the weight of their conversation settling between them. The sun had nearly set, leaving only the faint glow of twilight in the sky. It was peaceful, and for a brief moment, Marcus felt as though the world had slowed down, as if time itself had given them this quiet space to figure things out. "I don't know what's going to happen next," Lyra said finally, her voice steady again. "But I do know that I don't want to lose what we have. No matter what, I want to keep exploring this, whatever this is." Marcus smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Then we'll figure it out together," he said, "one step at a time." The next few days were filled with uncertainty, but also with a renewed sense of purpose. Marcus and Lyra spent their time talking, planning, and navigating the complexities of their relationship. They knew that it wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, especially when it came to Lyra's people and their expectations. But for the first time, Marcus felt that they had a chance. They had a chance to create something real, something that wasn't defined by the rules and boundaries that governed their respective worlds. Lyra had told him about her people's customs, about the way they viewed relationships and how they were chosen. She explained that, among her kind, there was no such thing as free will when it came to choosing a partner. It was all about social structure, about matching people based on compatibility, physical, mental, and even emotional. Love, as humans understood it, was a foreign concept to them. You see, Lyra had explained one evening, love was never a choice for my people. It was always arranged, calculated. We were matched based on our status, our lineage, our roles in society. We were expected to fulfill our duties, not pursue passion. But that's not what you want, is it? Marcus had asked. No, she had replied, her voice firm. I want more. I want to know what it feels like to love freely, to choose someone not because it's expected, but because it feels right. As the days passed, Marcus grew more determined to help Lyra find that freedom. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let her go. He would stand by her side, no matter what challenges lay ahead. But as much as they tried to focus on the future, the shadow of Lyra's people still loomed over them. They had made it clear that they didn't approve of her choices, and Marcus knew it was only a matter of time before they would come for her again. But for now, they had each other, and that was enough. Lyra had made her choice. She had chosen freedom. She had chosen Marcus. And Marcus had chosen her, despite the uncertainty, despite the risks. They both knew that their journey was just beginning, and that the road ahead would be difficult. But as they walked that road together, they would face whatever came their way with determination and trust in each other. The days that followed were a blur of decisions and uncertain futures. Marcus and Lyra knew that their time together was limited, but neither of them wanted to face that reality just yet. They had chosen each other, despite everything, and that choice meant more than anything else in the world to them. Lyra had made it clear to Marcus that her people would not easily let her go. The strangers who had approached them in the park were only the beginning. They would come again, with more force, more urgency, and Lyra would have to decide where her loyalty truly lay. Her people demanded that she return, that she fulfill her role within their rigid society. But Lyra had already made her decision. She wanted freedom, and she wanted Marcus. She wasn't going to return to a life of rules and expectations. Yet with every passing day, the weight of that decision became heavier on both of them. They couldn't stay hidden forever. Eventually, the truth would catch up with them. Marcus knew that he was part of something much larger than himself, something that could have far-reaching consequences not just for Lyra, but for Earth as well. He didn't fully understand the implications of what was at stake, but he knew that he would do whatever it took to protect her and their bond. One evening, as the two of them sat by the edge of the city, watching the sunset over the skyline, the peaceful silence was broken by the sound of footsteps. Marcus turned, instinctively tensing, but when he saw who it was, he relaxed. It was Lyra, but she wasn't alone. Behind her stood several figures, tall, imposing, and unmistakably from her planet. Their uniforms were similar to the ones the previous strangers had worn, and their presence sent a chill through Marcus. Lyra's eyes met his, and for a moment she didn't speak. Her face was set in a determined expression, but there was something in her eyes that spoke of regret. She had known this moment was coming, but it still hurt. She had hoped they could figure this out without violence, without confrontation, but now it was too late. Lyra, one of the strangers said, his voice cold, "It's time to come with us. You've made your decision, but it's not one that we can allow. Your place is with your people." Marcus stood up, stepping in front of Lyra protectively. He wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let them take her away, not without a fight. "I'm not going anywhere," Lyra said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm not going back to a life of rules and restrictions. I've made my choice." The stranger sneered, his expression hardening. "You think you can escape the consequences of your actions? You are not just some human who can be discarded once you've had your fill. You belong to us. You always have." Marcus felt a surge of anger, but he knew that getting into a physical confrontation with these beings would be a mistake. They were too strong, too powerful, but he wasn't about to let them intimidate him either. "We're not going anywhere," Marcus said, his voice firm. "You're not taking her?" Lyra placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle but firm. She didn't want him to get hurt, but at the same time, she understood why he was standing up for her. He had chosen her, and she had chosen him. They weren't going to let anyone tear them apart, not now, not ever. "Marcus, please," Lyra said softly. "You have to understand, I don't belong with them anymore, but if I stay with you, there will be consequences. They will never leave us alone." Marcus looked at her, his heart aching at the thought of losing her, but he knew that he couldn't let fear control their lives. "Then we face the consequences together," he said. "Whatever happens, we'll figure it out." The strangers exchanged looks, their faces filled with disdain. They didn't understand. They couldn't understand. To them, Lyra's defiance was an insult to everything they had ever known, but to Marcus it was a symbol of hope. It was a sign that Lyra was no longer a slave to tradition, no longer bound by the rules that had been forced upon her. She was free, free to make her own choices, free to love who she wanted, and free to live her life on her own terms. "I will not go back," Lyra repeated, her voice growing stronger. "I won't." For a moment there was a tense silence. Marcus held his breath, unsure of what would happen next. But then, to his surprise, the stranger who had spoken first stepped forward, his expression softening slightly. "You are a fool, Lyra," he said, his voice almost sympathetic. "But you are also strong, stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I see now that you truly believe this is the right choice for you." Lyra didn't respond, but she stood her ground, her chin raised in defiance. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had made her decision, and she would live with it, whatever the cost. The stranger nodded, as though accepting her decision. "Very well," he said quietly. "But know this, you will never be welcome among our people again. If you choose this life, you must be prepared to face the consequences alone." With that, the strangers turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the city. Lyra remained standing, her gaze fixed on the spot where they had been. She felt a mix of relief and sadness. She knew that she had just severed ties with her past, but she also knew that she was free. She was finally free. "Is it over?" Marcus asked, his voice low as he watched her. Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, it's over, but now the real journey begins." Marcus stepped toward her, his hand reaching out to gently touch her arm. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together," he said. "I promise." Lyra smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly at peace. She had chosen her path, and Marcus had chosen to walk it with her. The road ahead was uncertain, and there would be challenges they would face together, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She had found the one thing she had been searching for all her life: freedom. And now she would build a future with the one person who had made it possible. As they stood together, watching the night fall over the city, Marcus knew that this was only the beginning. They had no idea what lay ahead, but one thing was certain: they would face it as partners, as equals, and as something more than just the sum of their worlds. They were free.